Today in Social Research, we're talking about writing the literature review. In this episode, we are specifically talking about how to read academic literature and what we can take away from those readings. So let's start at the beginning with the first page. So when you download an article off of any sort of media, or if you're looking through hard copy journals, this will be the first page. And on the first page, you're going to have the title of the paper, the authors, the institution that those authors are from, as well as an abstract for the overall work. Now, when you're writing a research paper, you want to use the literature as a guide. And so we're going to go through this particular journal article and talk about the different points and how you can apply those to your own writing. So let's start with the title. So the title for your paper should be something that is descriptive of what exactly your research is talking about. And so we want to make sure that there's enough information to adequately express what our topic is about without making it so long and kind of chintzy that it's hard for a reader to figure out exactly what we're doing. Then you have the authors. So here we have 3 authors, and then below, down here at the bottom, you can see that we have the author's kind of information. Where are they from? What's their rank? And then also how you could correspond with them, how you can get in touch with the authors, which is a really great feature of different journal articles. Then on the first page, you also have the abstract. And the abstract gives a brief overview of the full article, explains why the research was done, how the research was done, and then what the authors found out. So here you can see kind of a brief synopsis or overview of this particular article about presidential appointments and religious stratification in the United States. And so you can see kind of you have some explanation of terms, and then you have some findings down towards the bottom. So this is great because it allows the reader to kind of skim through the article without skimming through the article. It helps you to determine if an article is going to be relevant to your particular topic before you have to read the whole thing. So the abstract is really helpful. The second thing that you'll see in any sort of article is an introduction. And the introduction is going to say why they bothered doing the research. It's going to explain the prior research. You'll find a statement of purpose also included in the introduction that points to kind of the significance of the research. And there's also some sort of indication of what's to come in the paper. So here you have kind of this first paragraph talking about where this research fits in the overall grand scheme of the literature. So you'll see that they cite other articles and books talking about religious stratification, and then they kind of point to this problem that there are others who have no access to public office. And then they have their research question. What has happened to this pattern of religious stratification over the course of U.S. history? To what extent does it persist? How much has it changed? So they're exploring these questions. They say we're going to report new data on these things, and then we're going to examine the religious affiliation. The results have implications for further research. So that's where kind of between the questions and the end is where they're kind of giving you a sense of where the rest of the article is going. Kind of like a little roadmap to the rest of the article. So then following the introduction, you would have a literature review. Now, this particular article doesn't have a strong literature review because it's more of what we call a research note. Really focusing on the data. And so for your particular purposes and any articles that you are writing, you're going to need to have a strong literature review. A literature review tells the reader that you know what is out there. You know what the topic is. You know all of the previous research that's been done. And so it brings the reader up to date on the previous research in the area, but it also shows the reader that you know what you're talking about. And so any sort of literature review should follow kind of a basic funnel format or inverted triangle. So you have kind of the quantity of relevant publications. So there's going to be a whole bunch of general papers and texts that are less specific to your topic, or maybe even less recent. These are things that are on your topic, but they're not exactly what you are wanting to research. And then as you get more narrow and more focused into question-specific papers, there are going to be fewer and fewer of those. And so you're going to go from papers that are very broad on this topic to papers that are much more specific to exactly what you're talking about. Another way to do this is from either less specific to more specific, or less recent to more recent. So let's say that there's been a lot of research on your topic and specifically your exact topic. So then you're going to want to point to kind of those landmark older studies and move towards kind of the most recent studies on this topic. And ultimately, the literature review should lead to kind of a proposed course of action. So now what are you going to do? So the literature review should guide the reader through the history of research on this topic to your specific research question. So the literature review kind of sets the stage for your specific question that you're going to ask. Next, we generally have a theory section, which is kind of an outgrowth of the literature review. Which theory is guiding the research? Gives you ideas for which theories might be appropriate for your own research. Now, in this particular article, it's not theoretically heavy, and part of that just has to do with the nature of this article. If you were to read Davidson's book on the topic, you would find that he uses a neo-Weberian stratification theory. So then he goes into the methods, and this is where you explain how the research was done, and it gives them enough information so that you could replicate it. So they tell you what websites they pulled data from. They used archival data. So they pulled data from multiple websites and different directories to find the religious affiliation of 43 presidents, 353 cabinet officers, and all of the 108 Supreme Court justices. And so then they tell you what they did with that they presented percentages, that they categorized them in certain ways. They justify why they used certain time periods. They basically told you why they did what they did and how they did it. And so after the methodology comes the analysis or the results. And so this is where you would put in statistical tables and kind of tell how you analyze the data. Now, this could be statistics and quantitative analysis, or it can be qualitative analysis. Here it's quantitative. They've presented you a table with numbers and kind of given you some percentages and information about the religious affiliation of presidents, and they've broken that down by time periods and then the religious affiliation. So then, after the results, you're going to have a discussion conclusion section, and this is where you connect the dots, connect together the literature review, the theory, the data, and the analysis, and pull it all together to try and answer your research questions. And so you'll see that's what they've done here, is they've answered kind of their research question. But also in the conclusion section, they're leaving you with further questions. So they've got questions that are still there, questions that need to be explored using other data. And so suggestions for future research is what you might call this. Also in the conclusion section, you might have a section of limitations where you talk about the limitations of your data and your method. Lastly, you're going to have a reference section, and the reference section just breaks down all of the different articles, books, resources that were used in the writing of this article. So this shows us what sources the authors used, and each one of these sources is also referenced within the text in what we call in-text citations. And so you can see this is a great place to go to find additional resources and data on this topic. So that's kind of the breakdown of an academic article. Next up in our next video, we'll talk about how to go about writing.